This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Jordan strikes back. The Hashemite kingdom unleashes its military might against ISIS, but how long will it last? Plus, the ultimate aim of ISIS, how the Islamic State seeks to unite the Muslim world behind its jihadist agenda. And, a month after the terror attacks in Paris, is the French government finally ready to address radical Islam at home? Hello, and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Julie Stahl, standing in for Chris Mitchell. Chris is on assignment in Amman, Jordan, and he'll be joining us from there in just a minute. But first, President Obama is seeking congressional approval in the war against ISIS. The president wants Congress to formally authorize U.S. military force against the Islamic State terrorist group. He said the goal is to wipe out the jihadi army without starting another ground war in the Middle East.
And with violent groups like this, there is only one option. With our allies and partners, we are going to degrade and ultimately destroy this terrorist group. The resolution we've submitted today does not call for the deployment of U.S. ground combat forces to Iraq or Syria. It is not the authorization of another ground war, like Afghanistan or Iraq.
A U.S.-led coalition has already pounded ISIS with thousands of airstrikes in recent months, successfully driving the group from the Syrian town of Kobani. But it still holds large areas of northern Iraq and Syria where it's committed brutal atrocities against Syrian and Iraqi army troops, as well as civilians. The latest American casualty, Kayla Mueller. The group's horrific murder of a Jordanian pilot sparked global outrage, particularly in the nation of Jordan, which borders Israel. Chris Mitchell joins us now from that nation's capital.
Thanks, Julie. Coming to you from a windy Amman, Jordan. We're on the Citadel overlooking part of the city of Amman, and in the background you can see an ancient Roman theater. The country is still reeling after the brutal killing of Mu'adh al-Qasasbeh by ISIS. He's become a national hero, and his death a rallying cry.
You don't have to go far in the capital of Jordan without seeing a poster of the man burned alive by ISIS. His horrific death changed the course of this nation.
Before the murder of Mu'adh al-Qasasbeh, many Jordanians were unsure if they should be involved in the U.S.-led coalition to defeat ISIS. But after the horrific killing, public opinion shifted dramatically.
In Jordan, everything has changed, and all people are more unity, and more insist and to eliminate this kind of cancer.
All of us, we are feeling very sad and very bad. We are all one community, and Mu'adh was one of us.
Jordanian analyst Urab al-Rantawi calls the death a turning point.
Before that, the government used to have some problems to convince the Jordanian people that the war against ISIS is our war.
While the public rallies around King Abdullah, Rantawi says the country's involvement against ISIS will increase, but only to a point.
More airstrikes, yes. More intelligence and security operations, yes. Maybe special forces for some surgeries here and there, yes. But ground troops deployed in Syria or in Iraq in big numbers, I think it needs different conditions.
Those conditions would include other Middle East nations like Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states joining Jordan in the fight.
By creating serious military forces and deploy them in Iraq, Jordan will be part of this. But to go alone or with a few countries, I don't think Jordan will do it.
Until such a coalition comes about, Jordan's air campaign continues, and according to a Jordanian general, is making progress.
ISIS has lost 20% of its capabilities, and more than 7,000 of their criminal fighters have been killed.
Many here still look to the U.S. for leadership. But as this man told us, in the fight against ISIS, which he calls Daesh, the U.S. is in the wrong position.
Leading from behind is not good. It's no more. It's not good to be leading from behind. You must be leading from front. To lead people to finish Daesh. Leading from behind, I don't believe it's good.
Being here, you get a sense of how deep the feeling is to avenge the death of Mu'adh and defeat ISIS. As world leaders discuss what to do with the Islamic State, the terror group has ambitions far beyond the land they now control. They have their sights set here on Jordan.
Jordan is a major tourist destination. Each year, millions of tourists flock to famous sites like Petra.
I think Petra is amazing. I think it truly is one of the wonders of the world.
But now Jordan finds itself on the front lines with IS, the Islamic State. The group's aggressive moves toward Jordan's border have many worried about the future of King Abdullah and Jordan, also known as the Hashemite Kingdom. In this video, Jordanians fighting for the Islamic State in Iraq tore up their passports and pledged to slaughter the king.
From their point of view, Jordan is an artificial country that has to be removed. Next stop is Israel.
Looking at the map, Jordan shares a long border with both Syria and Iraq. You can also see Jordan serves as a buffer on Israel's eastern border. In the vast desert to the north, the Jordanians maintain a strong, well-armed, and trained military. But Israeli analyst Jonathan Fine sees Jordan's real threat coming from the inside, not its border.
The danger is embedded in the potential of Muslim Brotherhood supporters, among them also Palestinians, who might cling and adhere to the ideology of the IS in Iraq.
Hopefully, Jordan won't face this enemy. It has two strong allies in the U.S. and Israel.
I don't think that I'm exaggerating that both Israel and the U.S. will prevent any takeover of IS on Jordan. Because from an Israeli point of view, the Eastern Front has always been a very sensitive issue.
That's why Israel feels it's vital to control the Jordan Valley on its eastern border. But the threat goes far beyond the borders of the Hashemite Kingdom.
In their eyes, the definition of the enemy is Western civilization, not a foreign policy of one government or another. And when they say they target the Judeo-Crusade alliance as their major enemy, they mean what they're saying.
For now, Jordan, usually a quiet political player, sits on the front lines, part of the new reality in an ever-changing Middle East.
Well, ISIS might be trying to expand its caliphate by taking over Jordan. Still, many people in the world don't understand what an Islamic caliphate is and why it's so important to some Muslims.
When a terrorist leader boldly declared a new caliphate, it sent shockwaves throughout the Middle East.
The so-called Islamic State became the first caliphate in nearly 100 years. When Abu al-Baghdadi made his announcement, other groups like Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood condemned it. Regardless of the internal competition, the caliphate would be a dream come true in the Islamic world.
This dream holds together some kind of a feeling that under the caliphate there is going to be a wonderful Islamic world. There's going to be a unity of all the Muslims. There is going to be a world power that cannot be matched by anything.
Islamic expert Professor Moshe Sharon says the caliphate began after the death of Muhammad.
Immediately after the Prophet's death, somebody from the Islamic community had to lead the community. In Arabic, the word caliph is a substitute, somebody who takes the place of.
A long line of these caliphs have ruled during Islam's 1400-year history.
This huge empire which was created was called the Caliphate, which means this huge territory with huge Islamic community at the head of which there is somebody who substitutes. Basically, they say to substitute the Prophet, but it's not true. Basically, somebody who substitutes God himself, because God is in heaven. Somebody has got to look after the faithful on earth, and of course, he is the Caliph.
On earth, the Caliph fights the non-Muslim world, called the House of War.
It's a mistake to think that he is like the Pope of the Muslims. He is a political and military leader that under him all the Islamic world is united, and of course the war and the fighting against the Christian world would be far easier.
Today, the jihadist offensive in the Middle East stretches from Gaza to Iraq.
It's all part of an offensive move by forces that may have different names: ISIS, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, what have you. But they're all on a mission, and that is to build a caliphate.
Middle East expert Joel Rosenberg says for these Muslims, it's a religious war.
To kill every Jew and Christian in their way, and to kill every Muslim that doesn't believe in a radical way that they believe. And this is a move. And why is it happening now? In part, it's happening because they believe that the time for the caliphate has come.
Sharon says Jerusalem is the prize and world domination their goal.
The major aim of the caliphate is to rule the world. And this can be done under the leadership of one caliph who he himself only can declare a holy war, a jihad.
More than a decade after 9/11, the West is still coming to grips with Islam's holy war.
Well, that's it from here in Amman, Jordan. Julie, back to you in Jerusalem.
Thank you, Chris, for bringing us those stories. Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline.
Remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ.
Comparing the Crusades with the Islamic State's murder rampage. What President Obama's remarks say about his understanding of Islam and ISIS's goals.
Israel and the Middle East, center of the world for thousands of years, and still creating headlines that reach back to the Bible. CBN News makes that connection each week with the groundbreaking program, Jerusalem Dateline.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline.
Hosted by award-winning correspondent Chris Mitchell, Jerusalem Dateline brings a Christian perspective to events that literally change history.
Expect as many as 1 million people here in Tahrir Square. Right now we're just running back into the bomb shelter. The siren just went off.
We take you to the action, whether it's the front lines or underground, digging into the past for discovery.
Here, reaching out.
Or in the footsteps of Jesus. Jerusalem Dateline is your window to Israel, Jerusalem, and the Middle East.
We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.
If you would like to broadcast Jerusalem Dateline or want more information, contact us at the address on your screen.
At a recent gathering of Christian leaders, President Obama compared the Christian Crusades to the atrocities of ISIS. But his remarks not only throw fuel on the fire of the conflict between the Islamic world and the West, they're historically inaccurate, according to Regent University's Dr. Corny Becker. Christian World News anchor Wendy Griffith recently spoke with Dr. Becker about what the president's remarks reveal about his understanding of Islam and its goals.
Dr. Becker, thanks for being with us.
It's a great joy, Wendy.
Well, we just heard President Obama say that Christians should not get on their high horse and judge Islam by ISIS activities. And he used the Crusades as an example. Was this an appropriate example?
It's always interesting to me. I think the Crusades might be the best known portion of Christian history, but yet maybe the most misunderstood. It was an extraordinary, anachronistic reading of the Crusades. We have to remember that the Crusades were, for the most part, defensive wars from Christianity to stem the tide of Islamic invasion, where ISIS, on the other hand, is an aggressive war to take over the rest of the world.
You know, people are still talking a week later about the president's remarks at the prayer breakfast and just trying to understand how it seems like the president seems so disconnected from the terror that ISIS is doing. Is he just not getting it? Where's the disconnect?
It's interesting, the word Crusades is not a word that was used during the time of the Crusades. It's in actual fact a term that was invented in the beginning of the 20th century with the rise of liberal ideologies and liberal politics. And it's very clear to me that the president's understanding of Islam and the Crusades tend to be flawed. He sees it as part of a critique on Western colonialism, but of course that's not what it was. It was a defense of Christianity to the invasions of Islam.
Well, both Islam and Christianity have, of course, spread throughout the world. Compare the way Islam has spread with how Christianity has spread.
Right at the beginning of the start of Muhammad and Islam, Islam always spread through war and violence. And even if you were to look in the life of Muhammad himself, and I know this is often something that nobody wants to talk about, but he goes back to his birthplace and conquers this through violence. Yet we find the opposite in the life of Jesus. There's not a single account in the life of Jesus where he called for violence, but quite the opposite, in that he would say, love your enemies, bless those who curse you.
Well, it's interesting because the Quran, as we know, has many verses that say it's okay to harm and kill the unbelievers, the infidels. Is there anything in the Christian Bible, in the New Testament, that says that we can do the same to unbelievers of Christianity?
Wendy, quite the opposite, and this is what Jesus said. He said, you have heard an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And you can always stop and just think about it. In a world like that, nobody's left with any eyes or any teeth. Jesus said, but I tell you, if somebody strikes you on the one cheek, turn the other cheek. And of course, Jesus lived this. Lived this. He died ultimately.
That's right. That's amazing. Well, what is the church's role in this great battle of these two civilizations.
What an extraordinary opportunity we have as the church right now, Wendy. Christianity has the message of redemption. In my mind, in Islam, there is no possibility for redemption. But here we have the opportunity as the church not only to proclaim clearly what Christ offers, but to show the way to salvation and ultimately peace.
What do you think about what King Abdullah in Jordan is doing right now? A lot of people are having a hard time understanding why Muslims are now killing Muslims, but you say this is not new.
This has always been true. This war of Muslims against Muslims is something that was there right from the beginning. What an extraordinary time we live in. Yeah. And one of the things that I'm hoping that's happening in the horror of what ISIS is that the eyes of the Muslim world, of the Arab world indeed would be opened so that they would see what's really going on.
Amen. Dr. Becker, thanks so much for being with us.
Always a joy, Wendy.
Up next, dire predictions about where France is headed. Stay tuned for a CBN News exclusive from Paris on French suicide. Islamic terrorists killed 17 people in France last month. But did those attacks serve as a wake-up call? Or is the government there still asleep? Some people in France say their leaders are held hostage to political correctness. And they are worried about the possibility of civil war. Dale Hurd brings us this shocking story from Paris.
French Holocaust survivors at the 70th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. These men and women who saw such terrible anti-Semitism as children must now, at the end of their lives, face a time when a lot of Europeans want to kill Jews again. France's Jews have felt like a target for a long time, and the killings here at the kosher supermarket have only confirmed their worst fears, and it will cause more of them to leave. Some have called the Charlie Hebdo and kosher supermarket killings France's 9/11. But America clearly changed after 9/11. It's not at all clear if France has changed. Yes, there have been arrests and more police and soldiers deployed. But political correctness is still so deeply rooted in France that speaking out too strongly against Muslim immigration and being labeled a racist can end a career. French commentator Eric Zemmour was fired last month for saying that Muslims should be deported to avoid chaos and civil war. Zemmour has written The French Suicide, about how France is being destroyed. We had hoped to interview Zemmour, but his publicist told us he was in hiding because of death threats. A protest march by this anti-Islamization group a week after the killings was banned by police. Even popular far-right leader Marine Le Pen has been tiptoeing around the subject of Islam. She's reportedly feuding with her foreign policy advisor, Emmerich Choprada, who gave an exclusive interview to CBN News. Choprada angered Le Pen by saying France is at war with some Muslims and in danger from what he called a fifth column of 1 million radical Muslims in France.
But the problem, which is maybe worse than this terrorist network, is the sympathy from a large part of the Muslim population in France towards the jihad and towards the radical ideas. I do not say that all the Muslims are violent, but I say that violence is rooted in Islam holy texts.
The world saw millions of Frenchmen pour into the streets to say, "I am Charlie." It was a touching outpouring of support for free speech in the face of Muslim terror. But conservatives in France saw something else: hypocrisy. The same French leaders marching for free speech who have not allowed free speech critical of Islam, except for a few Charlie Hebdo cartoons. The same French leaders whose policies have allowed Muslim extremism to flourish in France.
We don't have the freedom to say that the ones who are demonstrating are the ones responsible for what happened.
French author, journalist, and publisher Jean Robin says flatly the government brought on the attacks by being harder on critics of Islam than on Muslims.
The people who are responsible for these attacks are the ones showing off now and demonstrating for freedom of speech, which they crushed year after year.
In fact, when I asked French writer Renaud Camus about the French government's commitment to free speech, he laughed.
The government defend free speech? No, the aim of the government in the last 40 years has been to impeach free speech to express itself on the main subject, which is the change of population, which is totally banned from the media, which is what you are not allowed to say.
Camus has been banned from French media because of his outspoken views on the risk from Islam. And the French government's unwillingness or inability to effectively deal with the problem of Muslim immigration and radicalism could help ensure that there are more attacks like the one on Charlie Hebdo and the kosher supermarket. The words on the lips of those we interview were civil war.
I see civil war, and I'm not a prophet, you know. It's obvious, it's Lebanon.
Civil war, I mean civil war, that's clear.
Civil war, as terrible as it would be, civil war is a wrong expression, there would be nothing civil about it.
After what should have been a clear wake-up call for France, it's not at all clear that France will do what it takes to prevent the next attack.
We have to fight very firmly, very strictly against the Islamization of the French society. There is an Islamization process, and we have to stop it clearly.
The #1 best-selling book in France now is Submission, set in the future when France has a Muslim president and French women begin wearing veils. It was released, coincidentally, on the day of the Charlie Hebdo massacre. There is now a genuine fear and loathing in France that there will be more and more attacks like this because there are simply too many Muslim jihadists in the country to stop it. Dale Hurd, CBN News, Paris.
Up next, a unique natural phenomenon, massive bird migration through Israel. Welcome back. About 500 million birds migrate through Israel twice a year because the country lies along one of the world's major migration routes. We'll leave you with a glimpse of these majestic visitors. I'm Julie Stahl. We'll see you next week on Jerusalem Dateline.